Today I am going to be comparing two metric devices that I've been using for a while now for tracking sleep. These devices are the OURA third generation OURA, as you can see here. And the other one is the Series 7 Apple Watch. So I have been using both of them for a while now, and in particular, as I told you again, for tracking sleep. And we're going to be analyzing which is better, which is more accurate, their pros and cons, pricing, and all of the good stuff. Let's start with the Apple Watch. Now, the Apple Watch is it's a wearable device that you put wearing your wrist, obviously. It is pretty comfortable in terms of general usage in your day-to-day life. It's not heavy. It's really practical and easy to use. You can wear it while you're working out. You can wear it while you're in the shower, while you're swimming, because it's also water resistant and it's perfect for day-to-day use. Now, regarding pricing, you can get the Apple Watch from anywhere around $400 to $450 if you get the larger size, which I did. And yeah, moving forward to general usage and tracking sleep. We're gonna get to tracking sleep in particular, which is the topic of the video, but we're gonna get to that ultimately. General usage, I love Apple Watch for tracking my steps, for tracking my workouts, for tracking my rest in between sets. It's perfect for that. It's really handy. You just, once you've done with your set, you select the timer and you're good to go. It notifies you when it's stopped. So it's really a practical way to use a timer as opposed to having your phone out. And with your Apple Watch, it's always on your wrist. You have access to your phone from your wrist pretty much. So it's perfect for that, and it's quite good for that. Actually, it's quite accurate for heart rate, for tracking your calorie expenditure. It takes a while to be accustomed to tracking your habits and how your heart rate varies, like your heart rate when you're walking, your heart rate when you're actually working out, because in the beginning, in the first few days, if you actually start to track workout, it might say that you're burning 2,000 calories, and this is because it hasn't yet figured out what are your individual patterns, and this is normal. But once it gets accustomed to it, things are quite precise. It's also water resistant, so you can use it to track your swimming. You can use it and track your cardio if you're doing swimming laps, etc., etc. So you can also take it in the shower, which is absolutely fine. Now let's get straight to the point of this video, which is how precise is Apple Watch with tracking your sleep. So with my experience, also there are many software and apps that you can use with your Apple Watch, such as Pillow, Sleep Cycle, Sleep Plus, and many other that I've been using. And I've been using like my Apple Watch and my OURA simultaneously to see what's saying what and how can I compare them to actually end up this video. And I found that there were days that my Apple Watch did not quite get the time that I started sleeping, and this is really this happened a lot actually. So normally I will go to bed around 12 to 12:30 in the midnight, and my watch would say that I fell asleep 3 or 4 a.m., which is odd, given that my OURA said the complete opposite thing and gave me a latency of 10 minutes, for example, and while this gave me a latency of 3 hours. And this really comes down to a single thing, and it's really simple if you think about it really. Now, the Apple Watch has its sensors on the back of the watch. Actually, if you see here, it also there are times in which this lights up. I think it also does when you're sleeping at some point during the night. And the thing with the Apple Watch is that the fit on your wrist might not be as tight as it should be for the accuracy to be so precise, right? So unless you have it to the point in which it is pretty uncomfortable, because in order for me to get quite good understanding of its metrics, I had it to the point where it was like it was hurting. It was not comfortable, and you don't want your it's not comfortable to wear a watch in which your arm, your wrist is in absolute pain, right? But I did it for the sake of like see if there is a change in my metrics and my accuracy. The thing about what I was saying is that when the fit is not as snug and it's moving all around the place, if you're wearing like a normal person should, the metrics are not as precise. So there isn't really a watch that can give you metrics that are precise, and it should always be compared to an actual sleep clinical test when it comes to how accurate these devices are. And this is particularly good for tracking steps and tracking workouts and this and that, but it's not quite as precise when it comes to sleep and tracking analytical data as your body's temperature, your REM sleep, your sleep cycles, when do you actually fall asleep, when you wake up, your HRV, and analytical data such as this. So, conclusion about Apple Watch: good for tracking activity, good for tracking calorie expenditure, good for tracking general workouts and exercise, but not as precise for tracking sleep. So another thing about the Apple Watch is battery life. Now the battery is pretty low, in my opinion. It is pretty much similar to an iPhone, I would say. The battery drains completely after a bit over a day of use. Around there, it might be a day, it might be slightly more than a day. I find that if I'm using it for a full day and then go to sleep and wake up, it's definitely going to be drained. The battery is definitely going to be needing to be charged. And that's about the battery life of the Apple Watch. Now moving forward to the OURA Ring, and this is quite simple and straightforward. You only have an app for the OURA Ring. You have the OURA app, which you wear your ring. When you wear it and you can sleep, and then in the morning when you open the app, it will synchronize. So by synchronizing, you will have data and analytical data about your sleep. It will give you some general sleep scores to look at, and it will give you some readiness scores, and it will also give you activity scores. Now we pay attention to the first two, sleep score and readiness score. Now the sleep score is comprised from REM sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, your sleep end time, sleep start time, how long does it take to actually fall asleep, how efficient was your sleep, restfulness, time awake, etc., all of this good stuff. So by the look of all these analytics and data, it gives you a round up sleep score. The general idea is the higher the sleep score, the better your sleep overall is. But if you want to look further on that, you can, because you have many data as to REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep, and all of this stuff that I already mentioned. Now the OURA Ring's fit is quite snug, and you can see that when I'm moving it, my skin moves along it, so it's not twisting and turning by any means. It's quite snug. The accuracy is based upon the snug fit, pretty much. And you can see it has its sensors inside, which are looking like 3 bumps that get into your skin and track the metrics from, right? So actually a fun fact here is that the OURA Ring is the closest thing to an actual clinical test for sleep. So it's really interesting, and by only that you can assume that is the most precise metric device from everything else. But the other fact that I've figured out from my experience and from my working with my clients that have been using OURA Ring for themselves and assessing their data together, I have found that the OURA Ring is the most consistent with the metrics, as opposed to the Apple Watch, who told me that I had a latency, and by latency I mean the time that it takes me to fall asleep. As I mentioned before, one time it told me like I needed 3 hours to fall asleep. The one time it was more consistent, but it had many variations. Like it was not consistent as opposed to this one, which is really consistent, and I can have a good idea of how much sleep, the closest idea of how my sleep actually looks like. Because again, the most precise way to find out what your sleep looks like, how much REM you're getting, how much light sleep, deep sleep, and how many times you wake up during the night, you actually will need an electrodes wired to your brain, which is an actual sleep clinical test. Which why should you go through this process every night, right? So this is what an OURA ring or a sleep tracking device does for you. Really practical. Now, in terms of its use and its interface and generally how handy and practical it is, it's pretty practical. I mean, for me it is, because if you look like this, it's a ring. It looks slick as well. It looks clean. You can use it anywhere, and you could also use it in the gym, although I would not advise to, because it can be fragile and it can be poorly maintained if you do so. If you're lifting weights, for example, if you're doing cardio, that could be fine, but if you're lifting weights, I would not advise to wear it in the gym. But it's pretty handy and practical. You can use it anywhere. It's water resistant. You can use it in the shower, while you're washing dishes, while you're cooking, anywhere. And as opposed to the Apple Watch, which is quite significant in comparison to this one in size, this is hardly noticeable on your arm, and you will most likely forget that you're even wearing it. So that's a good thing about the OURA ring. Now, in terms of pricing, you can find the OURA ring. I think I got this for $370 or $360 or something like that. It's pretty pricey for a ring, I tell you that much, but it's definitely worth the investment. And the reason being is, like, besides having analytical access to your data and being able to assess the metrics and how you can actually further improve your sleep, another thing that I believe it's definitely worth the investment if you have the means is that it gamifies your sleep and your health. So by having such a good and big idea of how your sleep looks like, and most specifically, you have a sleep score for every night's sleep, you will do everything in your power to reach a higher personal best, right? To hit a sleep PR the next night, or keep improving your sleep. It gamifies your process with improving sleep, which can then lead to being more healthy, getting more sleep, being smarter. It increases cognitive performance and actually gives you a better life overall, right? So by gamifying your sleep, you will most likely improve it, and by improving your sleep, you will get the best benefits that you can, and you will optimize your sleep ultimately. When it comes to battery life, the OURA ring can be a pretty big guy here, because it will last up to 4 or 5, even 5 days. So out of the two, Apple Watch and OURA ring, who do I think wins in terms of tracking sleep? Definitely OURA ring. Now, don't get me wrong, Apple Watch is cool, and especially when you're tracking your activity. So my favorite combination actually is tracking my activity, tracking my steps with the Apple Watch, and tracking my sleep with the OURA ring. So that would be an ideal combination of both of them. If you can use them both, that's perfect. I do. So the general winner of sleep tracking again is the OURA ring. This where my opinions on the actual differences between the OURA ring and the Apple Watch, and what matters most when you're tracking your sleep. And this is why I think the OURA ring is the king when it comes to tracking your sleep. So if you have any questions, or if you want me to compare any more metric devices for anything else in terms of biohacking and tracking biomarkers, or anything in terms of your health and how to optimize it, make sure to let me know down in the comments. Other than that, guys, make sure to like the video. If you actually did like the video, make sure to share this video with your friends, and make sure to stay tuned for the next video. Cannot wait to see you on the next one, and peace out, guys.